I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
All right, before we get going, a little bit of a programming note. Kiki and myself, we have been doing this podcast for over 5 years, every week, rain or shine, no breaks, no hesitation, and we have been very proud of that. Very few podcasts have been able to go that long without any kind of break or interruption or anything. Saying that, after 5+ years of sitting down every week to record an episode, life has decided to slap us in the face.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah. Since most of our listeners do live in the United States, you already know.
Yeah.
So because of the everything, unfortunately, we are going to have to reshuffle the podcast a bit and move to a fortnightly format every 2 weeks for the foreseeable future. That means next week there will be no episode. For the first time in over 5 years, there will not be a new episode on a Monday. So we will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode, which we hope that you will enjoy. In fact, prior to having to reschedule everything, we had actually had a theme month planned. We kind of mentioned it last week. While we are not fans of the sports, March Madness, the NCAA playoffs, it's a thing. And, well, we're talking about a movie about basketball that happens to also come out on St. Patrick's Day. We thought, what the hell, and do a March Madness month, 4 episodes of basketball-related movies, which is very interesting from 2 people who aren't fans of sports.
Yeah.
But then everything happened, so the planned March Madness month is not going to happen, unfortunately. We had 4 movies planned. We might be able to do 2 of them and save the others for later in the year. Hopefully we'll be able to do them maybe for the NBA Finals or something, if we remember.
Yeah.
So on that, happy St. Patrick's Day, dear listeners. This episode should be coming out on St. Patrick's Day, and it is a movie that we've kind of been saving specifically for an episode on St. Patrick's Day.
Well, what else are we going to save it for?
I mean, last year we did Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And so it's like we don't have many St. Patrick's related Disney movies that we could do. So we are returning to the Disney Channel original movie with The Luck of the Irish. And this is a movie that prior to doing it for this podcast, we have not seen. It was a double new watch. And I have said before that a lot of these Disney Channel original movies, I was already out of the age range to watch when these came out, so I never really watched them. And for Kiki, we've talked about this on the podcast before, this was right around the time Disney Channel was going from a premium cable service to a standard cable channel with commercials and such. Thus, you yourself would be able to watch it, but again, you would also be out of the age range of these movies.
Yeah, this was about the time got it as a normal. But again, we were grown adults by this point. So this would not be a movie I would just sit down and watch.
2001, we had just exited high school. We were both in college. We really want to see a movie about high school after we just left it.
Yeah, not at all. This would not have been my thing. Basketball.
But so yeah, luckily I somewhere someone had an idea of, wouldn't it be funny if we made a movie about a leprechaun that could play basketball? Because basketball players are usually known as being very tall, and leprechauns are very small. So wouldn't that be funny? And I honestly would not be surprised if that was the discussion, and then it became this. I'm just pulling this out of my butt, but that's the only thing that was all I was thinking of watching this movie.
Yeah. I have no idea where this movie came from.
And it's like, usually we do these big things about, let's talk about the backstory of this movie. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I also tried to research it and could not find anything.
The only thing was like, oh, this movie has a bunch of people that we've already talked about. So that was like, that's kind of it. Either people we recognize or people we've talked about in other movies. So like, there isn't some great behind the scenes story. It's just, this is a story about a kid who finds out that he's half leprechaun and he just plays basketball. Like, this has to be the strangest concept for a kids movie, never, much less a TV movie of the week that these movies were.
I mean, Disney Channel had a lot of weird movies over the years. This is by far one of the weirdest. I mean, we've talked about some of the weirder ones. We talked about the Smart House. They've got that whole one we haven't talked about is the zombie musical series.
High School Musical. High School Musical with zombies.
Yeah, which seems very weird.
Like, there's another. A lot of them are Halloween related. Like the Under Wraps, which is about a kids finding a mummy. Phantom of the Megaplex, which is just Phantom of the Opera, but it's a movie theater. So it's like so many. A lot of the weird ones are just Halloween related. So to see one that is Irish related, because I can't say St. Patrick's Day because they don't really mention St. Patrick's Day by name. It's just Irish and leprechauns and all of the tropes that go with it.
Well, this was meant as a St. Patrick's Day movie because it came out on St. Patrick's Day or right next to St. Patrick's Day. So they wanted it to be a St. Patrick's Day movie, at least in the marketing. Like I said, I have no idea what the creator of the movie was going for, but Disney wanted it to be their St. Patrick's Day movie.
I mean, it makes sense with the number of Halloween and Christmas related DCOMs there are. It would make sense that they would want to, branch out into other holidays. The one thing that's funny for me, and guess I'm the only one that's going to get this joke. I know I am, but it's going to bother me if I don't say something. So the main kid in this movie is named Kyle. And his Irish last name is O'Reilly. And there is a professional wrestler that is named Kyle O'Reilly. And going by his age, he would have been the right age to watch this movie in 2001. And I wonder, did he watch this movie and that was where he got his wrestler name from?
That would be hilarious. There are weirder wrestler names, but that ones.
Yeah. So I guess we can just go into the cast because we couldn't find anything to really talk about the backstory of this movie. You mentioned Smart House. Ryan Merriman, who was the kid in Smart House, is back, and he's playing our lead character, Kyle.
You know, I did not even put it together that was the same kid.
Neither did I until I was looking up stuff to talk about him for this podcast, and I saw that he was in Smart House, and yes, he played that kid. Another person we have talked about previously, Timothy Omundson. We last talked about him because he was King Richard in Gallivant. He looks different without the beard. Our villain, Seamus McTiernan.
Like I said in Gallivant, I've been watching this dude since Xena, so I'm used to how he looks and everything. The one that shocked me was I wasn't expecting Henry Gibson to be in this movie.
Yeah, Henry Gibson as our fake-out villain, Riley O'Reilly, who is Kyle's grandfather. And no matter what movies he's in, now granted, as a child, I first heard his voice in Charlotte's Web because he was Wilbur the pig. So in my child brain, that voice is the voice of Wilbur. But that face will always be a certain supremacist leader in the Blues Brothers movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever watched Laugh-In, of course, he was on that. Towards the end of his life, he had a great recurring role on Boston Legal. Go watch that series if you never had. Really good series.
We could do an entire podcast just on Henry Gibson's career. It's just too much to talk about. Too much to talk about. But he is a legend, and passed away a few years after this movie happened, 2009.
Yeah. But a different character in here for him because he's sort of, like you said, the fake out villain, but then he's the sweet granddad as well. By the end of it.
So let's get into the plot of this movie. We have our boy Kyle here. He plays basketball for his junior high team. He's very good at playing basketball. In fact, he is very good at everything. He has this lucky coin that he wears around his neck. And he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to practice. He doesn't have to study. He's just good at everything because luck is on his side. But there is a heritage festival that is coming up at his school. And a lot of the students are getting involved to talk about their heritage, where their family comes from. The head of this heritage festival, Bonnie Lopez, comes to Kyle asking him, hey, we want you to be involved. Tell us where your family comes from. And he says, well, my family is American. We come from America. That's where we're from. That's my heritage. And it's like, no, America is the land of immigrants. Everyone came from somewhere. Your family had to come from somewhere. And Kyle does not know. He does not know his heritage because his family has been keeping his heritage a secret from him for reasons. And
I wanna talk about this bit because he goes to his parents and he's like, "Hey, what's our heritage?" And his mom's like, "We're from Cleveland." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, but where before that?" And his parents were like, "We're American." And they say it with the type of thing that, like, if you didn't know this movie was about leprechauns, this is the sort of thing that's like, we don't ask why Grandma and Grandpa moved to Argentina after the war. You know? Like, it's really creepy if you didn't know the premise of the movie.
Yeah.
If you re-edited this with, like, some horror movie music in the background, you could turn this into something way different.
We are from France.
Yeah, I mean, it's either we are from France or we don't ask about Argentina. Like, it's one of those two. But this movie goes with we're leprechauns.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just go through it. The reason that their parents have hidden his true heritage, that he is Irish, is because, one, yes, they're, well, Irish, number one, and they tell Kyle and how when the Irish first came to America, they were persecuted. They were forced to do jobs that no one else wanted to do. And I mean, that is true. That is what happened. You know, we've talked about the strife of other immigrants that came to America. You know, we all know what happened when they brought black people to America. I don't want that to be this kind of a podcast, but you know.
The movie does bring it up because Kyle's best friend is a black kid who brings up the fact that at least they paid the Irish.
Yeah, I kind of had to tug my collar a bit when that line was said.
Well, I mean, it is a point that is a thing about white supremacy that doesn't get talked about a lot, you know, that the Irish considered white for white supremacy's sake, you know? It was
Yeah.
like there were the white Europeans and then there were the Irish,
Mhm.
which is ridiculous as all racism is, but that's what was going on at the time.
Mhm.
And then they were like, "Hey, we need more people on the side of white supremacy. Let's you know, loop in the Irish." So, yeah. The not to be bogged down with that, but like I did like that the movie at least kind of pointed that out, even though it doesn't linger on it because silly kids movie. But
Yeah.
go
Also,
ahead.
going into the idea of mixed race marriage. That is another reason why Kyle's parents never told him about his heritage. According to the rules of this movie, he is a mixed race child because his mother is a leprechaun, and it is shunned in the leprechaun community to marry outside of the little people, and she married a human.
He's just a normal human from Cleveland.
Yes. That's the thing, is that we never find out what the father is. He's just from Cleveland. Like, we don't know what race he is. We don't know what his ancestry is. that is the one thing about this movie that bugged me.
He's a Smith or something.
Yeah.
He has like the most boring European name, you know.
But they changed it.
Smith.
I mean, if you didn't know that this movie was about leprechauns, if you didn't see the title of this movie called Luck of the Irish, and it's like he finds his dad's old yearbook, and it has his father under a different name. Why would my father change his name? You would think, okay, it's another one of those we don't talk about why Grandpa went to Argentina.
His friend even says maybe your parents are in witness protection.
Who knows? But it's like if you didn't know that this movie was called Luck of the Irish, you have some questions about this movie.
Yeah.
So like they go about, every time he asks about his heritage, they're like giving him the runaround, and like all it's doing is making Kyle here kind of more trying to find the right word. Paranoid doesn't seem like the right word. If they had just simply said, your mother's Irish, her family came here 100 years ago or whatever from Ireland, she's a whatever generation, and Irish whatever, and that is your heritage. They could have avoided like half of this movie if they had done that at the beginning of this movie.
What's so funny is it wasn't like the Heritage Day was like bring a detailed family tree. It was just like show up in your nation's ethnic costume or something, or like
do something that represents,
sing a song of your homeland, like
something that represents your heritage. Something.
Yeah.
Because he has this nightmare at the beginning of the movie where every student in the school is dressed. It's very scratch your head because they're all dressed in ethnic stereotype wear, and then you realize this is a teenage boy's nightmare of the Heritage Day festival. Of course, they're all dressed in their native garb because this is a festival about celebrating your heritage. But yeah, so he gets, he starts asking questions. He's trying to find out who he is, where he comes from, and why his family is so secretive of this heritage of his. Eventually, we end up going to this Irish folk festival. Him and his buddy end up just walking by the fairgrounds, and there's this Irish folk festival happening.
Well, they see some flyers on a bus stop. He notices that the flyers have the same icon on them that his lucky coin that has. And he was like, oh, I always thought it was Chinese or something, like some little trinket my mom had. Mm-hmm. But here it is on this Irish festival picture, Maybe I'll go see.
Yeah, so they end up there. This is where we end up meeting Riley O'Reilly for the first time, where he talks about, real Irish make their own shoes, real,
it's really more leprechauns make their own shoes.
But he never says the word leprechaun in that moment. He says Irish.
Well, yeah.
But, leprechauns and cosplayers.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But as this is going on, there is you can tell that this came out in the early 2000s because a plot point of this movie is river dance. And they cannot call it river dance because that word is trademarked. Nor can our villain refer to himself as the Lord of the Dance because that is also trademarked.
I am the sage of the steppe!
Well, I mean, they use the proper terms, and maybe Michael Flatley has trademarked Lord of the Dance, but, he got it from a traditional Irish song. Mm-hmm. But, you know, where I am from has kind of a lot of Irish heritage in the area. In fact, my alma mater has a Center for Irish Studies that is partially funded by the Irish government. So, yeah, kind of a big deal where I'm from. So there are a lot of Irish step groups around the area. You'll find a lot of little girls, especially not as many guys, but especially a lot of girls with Irish heritage getting into Irish step dancing. I live not too far from Savannah, which is one of the largest St. Patrick's Day festivals in the entire United States. So that is a massive, massive time of year in kind of the entire region. I went once to Savannah on St. Patrick's Day. Never again. Not really my vibe. I am not for huge crowds like that. But it is fun to sit at home and watch the parade on local television, I will say. I took, during the course of my schooling and everything, just because I had access to it, Irish theater, Irish literature, and all that kind of stuff. Interest in Irish culture, just because of where I live and the fact that it's very big in my area, and at my university. So it is kind of interesting the way they wove it into this movie. A lot of it, of course, is very stereotypical, but some of it is pretty decent.
For a TV movie of the week that's a kid's movie, sure. I mean, that's really what you got to boil this down to. This is not like a theatrical presentation for a wide audience. This is a movie made for the Disney Channel to specifically be watched by preteens.
Yeah, I mean, it is really funny because there's so many things in here that are like sort of close, but not really. It is kind of hilarious that he goes to the Irish festival and figures out, okay, I must be Irish, but his lucky coin gets stolen by the bad guy.
Yes, as they're step dancing, his goon, the bad guy's goon, kind of bumps into him and does the old switcheroo, switching out the lucky coin with a fake coin. And now the kid who has relied on luck for everything in his life all of a sudden now has no luck.
Yeah. He wakes up the next morning and his mother is now really Irish, you know?
She was talking with an American accent at the beginning of the movie. Now she's gone with a full Irish accent. Her hair has turned from brown to red.
And it's all curly.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't. Instead of making breakfast, she started making, like, blood sausage and stuff like that,
And it's not just that she's talking with an Irish accent. It's like stereotypical Irish accent with all of the stereotypical Irish vernacular.
She makes him lunch for school, and one of the things she makes him is Colcannon. And I wish somebody had looked up what Colcannon is and what it looks like, because it's what she gives him is a bucket filled with slop, And Colcannon is like mashed potatoes with cabbage in it, or herbs, or some other greens. But generally, did that look like mashed potatoes to you?
No.
I mean, Colcannon just like, you can Google what it looks like. It just looks like mashed potatoes with greens in it. So like, what the hell is she giving him?
Just poor planning on the people who made this movie.
Well, I think that maybe, like, I don't know anything about the person who wrote the movie or whatever, but like, I have a feeling that maybe they were just like, oh, we've heard these words before, but we don't know what they are.
And this is still, I mean, this is 2001. While Google may not have been a thing, there was still search engines on the internet, because I was doing this in like 98, 99. So they could have looked it up, what it looked like, what it's supposed to look like, and but I guess they didn't do that.
Or, I mean, they could have literally just consulted any Irish person.
Yeah.
You're making this for Disney. You're telling me Disney can't get a hold of literally any Irish person?
Yeah. Another plot point in this movie that becomes major, it deals with the climax of the movie, is, as we said, this kid plays basketball, and his school's team is making it to the playoffs. In fact, it becomes the first year that school has ever made it to the playoffs. And so that's a lot of pressure. And now this kid, who basically is the star player of the team because of his luck, now has no luck. They win their first playoff game in spite of Kyle constantly screwing up. I mean, to bring it back to the basketball plot here, which leads to the weird thing between Bonnie and Kyle. I'm guessing there's supposed to be this will they won't they thing happening with them in this movie. Like, she hates him because he's always relied on his luck, and it's always paid off for him. He's never had to try at anything. Everything just comes natural to him because he had good luck. But now that he doesn't have it, everything is hard for him because he actually has to put effort into something. Meanwhile, Bonnie, who, as we find out in the movie, doesn't even want to be part of this heritage, doesn't even want to be in charge of the Heritage Festival. Her father is simply making her be part of all of these programs because it'll look good on a college resume. But she wants to be in sports. Specifically, she wants to play basketball. And she's actually good because she practiced. And Kyle now sucks because he's never practiced. He never needed to.
Yeah, I kind of like this subplot that, here's the girl, and let's point out the obvious. It's a girl of color.
Mm-hmm. Lopez, Latina.
Yeah. She has tried, and yet here's not only a boy, but a white boy, who gets everything handed to him. He's got luck. So read luck for any kind of privilege you want,
Yeah.
And she gets rightfully salty about it. And she tells him, like, you have luck, I practiced, I got good. Mm-hmm. He kind of does take that to heart. we see at the beginning of the movie with the basketball, like, he's always hogging the ball. He's not a team player. His teammates are open, but he takes the ball instead, and he makes all the shots. He does all the plays, you know? But we see...
And he's making basically trick shots without looking because he has the luck.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, if you want to bring it to privilege, and I were thinking about this when they wrote the movie, because it was really before we were having these conversations in the open, you know? But he's not even really thinking about it in that way, because he doesn't know about the luck, you know? His best friend, the black kid, you know? Russell is telling him that, like, hey, you are the luckiest kid I know. And he's like, no, I'm not. And then he's like, oh, look, a $10 bill on the ground. And Russell's like, okay, what do you call that? You know? Like,
yeah.
Like, I just said you were the luckiest kid ever. And you're like, no, I'm not. Oh, look, a $10 bill. I think that's a really interesting way to look at privilege. You know, he has no idea that this gold coin he wears around his neck really is a lucky gold coin. It really is making life easier for him. And he doesn't realize that everything is easier for him until somebody points it out to him directly who doesn't have that gold coin, until later when he loses the gold coin and he has to see what life is like when things are slightly more difficult, you know?
When he actually has to work for it.
Yeah, when he has to practice for it, when he has to become a team player, which he does. You know, he learns to be like, oh, you know, maybe I should pass the ball to the teammate who's in a better position to make the correct shot, you know?
That is kind of Seamus in the movie as well. Seamus is very me. I will be king of the leprechauns. And that final stretch in the final game where it's Kyle versus Seamus in the basketball game, Seamus is demanding the ball every time. Give me the ball. Give me the ball. And even Seamus is getting up in Kyle's face saying, you can't beat me. And in that moment, Kyle realizes, I don't have to beat you. We have to beat you. And passes the ball to his friend, who makes the game-winning shot. So it's Kyle in that moment, that final act, learning how to be a team player, realizing that you don't always have to be the one that makes the game-winning shot. You don't have to be the one who hogs the ball. It's okay to share the glory.
Yeah, when, you know, I win when we all win.
And that is actually a great moment in the movie, is Kyle realizing that he's not alone in the game. But like you said, it's you know, you could see it. I don't think that this was what they intended for the movie, but there is a lot of analogy of, you know, like you said, white privilege, of Kyle having basically everything handed to him because of this luck of the Irish. And when that luck is gone, he actually has to work for it, and realizing how difficult it is. So we get, you know, to kind of fast forward here, when everybody figures out that it was Seamus that took the coin, they go to him and they make the challenge of, you know, something that all of, you know, Seamus even makes a joke about, you know, what are you going to challenge me in video games? Challenge me in something, you know, something on an even playing field. And he says, sports. I challenge you to sports. I beat you, you give me back my coin, you let my grandpa go. Because Seamus has kidnapped his grandpa. Because evil. And, you win, you keep my grandpa, you keep the lucky coin. So they do these sort of marathon of Irish-themed sports, which is very interesting to watch, but they tie. They tie at the end. And it's all about Seamus is all about semantics. You didn't beat me, therefore you don't get your coin back. You don't get your grandpa back. You didn't beat me. We tied.
The whole movie hinges on a joke that comes up earlier in the movie, and it becomes the linchpin of the final act. Because he's like, all right, I'll sweeten the deal, We'll do one last thing. I'll become your slave or whatever, but we play a game of basketball. But the other thing is that if Kyle beats Seamus, then Kyle gets everything back, the coin, his grandpa, all that. And Seamus has to spend the rest of eternity living on Éire.
Kyle specifically says the words, you have to spend the rest of your days in the land of my father, the land of Éire.
Which is a callback to earlier in the movie when his mother says that the grandfather gave permission for her to marry. Well, I thought you said he was from Éire, not Erie. In other words, Cleveland being on Lake Erie, not Éire, the ancient word for Ireland.
Because this is what it's all about. That's why Seamus wants the lucky coin. Seamus wants to be king of the leprechauns. And so what he's done is that he has stolen all of the gold coins from the other Irish clans. All of the other leprechaun clans. He has collected them all. And he is going to use the combined luck of every leprechaun clan in existence to become king of the leprechauns and rule over them and rule Ireland, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit vague, but something ultimate power.
And I do like how he says, we're in America, we don't believe in kings here, which modern day 2025 is
Yeah. The thing is, though, is that, it gets to the end and, they learn their lesson. They make the winning basket. Yay. And Seamus is all like, he has his, oh, you're going to send me into the briar patch. And, I get to go back to Ireland. Big deal. And the kid's like, no, remember, I said the land of my father, the land of Éire. And he's like, learn to pronounce it. It's Éire. And he's like, no, my father was from Cleveland. And there is at least a funny bit of Timothy Olmanson screaming, Ohio! Like teleport Cleveland.
Yeah. So it's like, imagine you're a kid, you're living in Ohio, and this leprechaun is making out that living in Cleveland has to be the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And he just lands right on the shore of Cleveland.
Yeah, right on the...
Right in the middle of Lake Erie.
But all's well that ends well, because Grandpa, who runs a potato chip factory, gives a scholarship and an internship as long as let her play basketball next year.
So yeah, her dad says, yeah, sure. She can totally play basketball. In fact, we were just talking about her playing basketball, and yeah, I'm all for it. And then, it's good because, hey, internship, college scholarship, that's good for my daughter. So yeah, at the end, he goes from this fake out villain to kind grandpa. But this is also him paying her back from earlier. If he, we had mentioned it a little bit of it, but she has this whole speech of, we all come from somewhere, and it's, and you're really, talking to Riley O'Reilly, that, hey, you've punished your daughter for, marrying another man, marrying a non-Irishman. And, it doesn't matter anymore. Even Kyle's saying it, that was years ago. That doesn't matter now. What matters is now. What matters is, getting our luck back. What matters is becoming a family again. And all of those words kind of get to the grandpa and say, okay, you're right. I have held this grudge for way too long. I mean, we're not going to exchange Christmas cards or anything, but, we'll start somewhere.
Yeah, and then, of course, we end on Heritage Day, where Kyle does some step dancing, and then him and Bonnie sing "This Land Is Your Land."
Yeah, that's a very awkward ending. 'Cause it's like he says, hey, I'm proud to be Irish, but I'm also proud to be American. We're all Americans. And he starts singing, "This Land Is Your Land." And then Bonnie comes in and she starts singing. And then his dad starts singing. And everybody starts singing. And it's like, it's a very corny ending. But it's a very corny ending. And it's a very... Did I mention this movie came out in 2001? March 2001, by the way, before all of that happened.
Yeah.
But still, in retrospect, it is a very rah America ending that feels of the era.
Yeah, and also watching it in current year 2025, I don't know, it hits weird.
Yeah, it really does.
Because it's all like, everybody's an immigrant, everybody's American,
Isn't it great to be American, and where we accept immigrants no matter where they come from? We're not like sending them back just because we don't like what they represent.
Yeah. Isn't it great that, immigrant hatred is all in the past here in America? Yeah, it hits a little different right now.
Yeah. There's not much else in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of fluff in this movie. There's some good moments, but it's a lot of fluff. But again, a lot of these DCOMs are fluff. They're something to entertain your kid for 90 minutes. On that, Kiki, does the luck of the Irish have the magic?
Okay, does it have the magic? It's cute and mostly harmless. It is silly and at times entertaining. I'm not sure if that equates to magic, but it's better than a lot of the ones we've seen.
I'll agree on that. This movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Again, I only knew of this movie prior to this on Reputation, and the reputation of being one of the weirdest DComs there is. Basically, I heard that it was Teen Wolf with leprechauns.
I also thought of Teen Wolf.
So, yeah, because like he's turning into a leprechaun. It's like, this is Teen Wolf. This is it's Teen Wolf for babies.
Yeah.
But it's like Disney does Teen Wolf, and that's how I always heard the movie described. I didn't get all of the... I could see where the vibes are. The movie is fine. The movie is safe. That's not a bad thing to say, but you're not getting thrilling, compelling storytelling in a Disney Channel original movie.
There are a few laughs. It's not offensive unless you're like really touchy about Irish stereotypes. You know.
Yeah. I would say it's one of the better DComs that we've watched on the podcast. I'll give it a pass. I'll say it does have the magic, but it's not going to be something I'm going to come back to.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that similar vein.
So it's fine. It's a harmless movie that you can watch with your kids on St. Patrick's Day. If the kids are not into Darby O'Gill and the little people, show them Luck of the Irish.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we have to say on that. Again, no new episode next week. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with our other March Madness related movie, White Men Can't Jump. And this is a programming warning for those of our listeners that listen with their little ones. White Men Can't Jump is an R-rated movie. So, it's going to be a while since we do something that's family friendly.
Yeah, I think our programming after that will be family friendly again. So
yeah, come back in 2 weeks' time for White Men Can't Jump, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.